started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining our AARP New Hampshire event on how to spot and stop scams. My name is Pam Doobie. I'm your host today, and I am also an employee of AARP New Hampshire. I am going to begin, actually, this event is already recording, and it will be available on our YouTube channel in a few days. I'll be putting the link in the chat for you as soon as I finish with this quick introduction. If you have a question, please put it in the chat and we'll get to as many as we can at the end of our presentation today. So today I am very excited, really excited to be joined by Doug Shadel. Doug is a former fraud investigator and Special Assistant Attorney General with the Washington State Attorney General's Office. He served as the State Director for AARP Washington for 2 decades. He's collaborated on numerous educational videos and academic studies and has co-authored 5 books about fraud. He's also co-authored the 2021 AARP Fraud Frontier Report, one of the largest studies AARP has ever done on consumer fraud. Doug is currently Managing Director of Fraud Prevention Strategies, a Seattle-based consulting firm. And today, Doug is here for you. And we need to hear his advice because fraud has reached a crisis level, not only here in New Hampshire, but across the country. Here in New Hampshire, though, in 2023, our Attorney General's Office of Elder Abuse and Financial Exploitation doubled the size of their team to address the issue that is growing at an alarming rate. The Granite State ranks 25th in the country for fraud, and reported losses exceed $27.5 million. We need to ensure you know how to protect yourself and your loved ones from fraud and ensure people who have been victims of fraud know how and why to report it and get the support they need. AARP has a wealth of resources at our Fraud Watch network, and I'll be putting that link into the chat for you as well. At this time, we hope you enjoy today's program, and I kindly ask Doug to take it away.
Well, thank you, Pam, and thanks to AARP New Hampshire for sponsoring this event. It's really a pleasure to be able to reach folks in your neck of the woods. I'm going to share my screen. If you can let me know if you can see this. How are we doing? Can you see that? Oh, wait a minute. I'm skipping ahead.
I can see it. We can see it, Doug.
Okay, good. Okay. Well, as Pam mentioned, I am a former long-term employee of AARP. I worked there for 30 years. Before that, I worked for the Attorney General's office here in Seattle as a fraud investigator. And after about 14 years of doing that and finding it very difficult to catch any of these scammers, I decided to start doing consumer education. I've sort of been doing that ever since. And that's what we're here today to do. I want to here are 3 things that I think we should plan to learn today as you make yourself more aware of scams. Understanding the scammer's strategy. Over the years, we've interviewed dozens of former convicted scammers, and they've given us a pretty clear idea of how they go about their craft. And I'm going to play a couple short videos from 2 of them who are really good at articulating kind of their strategy. The second thing is I'm going to just show you quite a few of these so-called AI deep fakes and robocalls. You know, when you read about fraud, all you can hear about is AI this and AI that. It's going to make it so much worse because it's going to make it harder to determine who's real and who isn't. And there is some truth to that, but it's not horrible. And I think there's some ways to get through that. And then finally, I'm going to do a little bit of a deep dive on this #1 scam that targets older people right now, which is tech support scams. So those are 3 things we're going to do. The scammer, when you ask a scammer, what is your strategy for defrauding people? Whenever I would interview them, that's the first question I'd ask. They always sort of give you the same thing. The first thing is they want to build trust. Obviously, you're not going to keep talking to somebody if you don't trust them, and you're certainly not going to give them your money. And so there's a number of strategies they use to build fake trust. The second thing they all say is you got to get the victim under the ether And at first I heard, well, what does that ether mean? That's not a very scientific word. We're going to have to call it something else. What they mean is a heightened emotional state. Get the victim worked up emotionally so that it's easier to manipulate them. And I'll show you what I mean in a minute. And then just create urgency. This is obvious, right? You're not going to act unless there's some urgent reason to do that. So those are the sort of three things. And I want to just give you some examples of them. There's this, in terms of building trust, there's a number of strategies they employ. But this guy, Stephen Michaels, we interviewed several years ago, is good at articulating one of those strategies, which is to pretend that you're like the victim so that they'll trust you. And here's his way of describing it.
I understand that before you're going to trust me, you have to like me. And one of the ways in which you're going to learn to like me is to understand that I am very, very similar to who you are. And I try to be a chameleon and parrot whatever views I hear you speak, they become my views. If they're a Democrat, I'm going to be a Democrat. If they're a Republican, I'm going to be a Republican. And I'm going to share the same religion. I'm going to share the same sports affiliations. Eventually you'll trust me. I'll be a friend. I won't be a stranger. And then I've got you right where I want you.
And now Stephen Michaels did these sort of long cons, which are, get the person on the phone, talk to them for days, not maybe even weeks, and steal a lot of money. These people we normally never catch, right? But we got this one, and so he's giving us his insights. But another, probably more common way to build trust is to pose as a legitimate brand, whether it's Medicare, whether it's a government brand, Medicare, Social Security, IRS, or whether it's business imposters, Spectrum, Xfinity. And the reason I know this, since leaving AARP, I'm doing some consulting work for a company called NomoRobo. NomoRobo is an app you can put on your phone that will block spam calls, robocalls. And I've been monitoring. The way they do that is they purchase hundreds of thousands of mothballed phone lines and they run them into their computers. And when they see calls going out from one number to a number of numbers, that's a robocall. And they put it in a blocked list. So when you have this app on your phone, and I call you, the first thing it does is it runs my number coming in against this block list. And if there's a match, it blocks it. And if there's not a match, it lets it through. But they also record all of these calls. And so I've been doing some analysis, and things like Amazon, and the number one call, I'd say of these two buckets, government imposters, Medicare is by far the number one. Spam, robocall. I don't know how many of you put it in the chat if you've gotten a call lately asking if, do you have Medicare Part A and B? Those aren't necessarily frauds. They are definitely spam, though, which means a commercial, an insurance agent's trying to sell you something. And on the business side, Amazon by far is the number one call, imposter call, not the real Amazon, but, a business imposter. Here is the FTC list. My list is a little different. They have Best Buy and Geek Squad. These are imposter scams that have been reported to the FTC. But all the same names are up there: Amazon, PayPal, Microsoft. None of these brands are going to call you ever, the legitimate brand. So if they call you, you know that it's imposter. Now, the third way to build trust is by posing as a famous person. And this is sort of, it's not completely new, but it is true that AI has made it much more complicated to determine who's really calling you. And I'm going to play you some videos that I just pulled off the internet, and you can tell me whether you think it's easy or hard to tell the difference between real and fake.
Second youngest son. He's suggesting it came out of nowhere. What we subsequently learned is it may have come from the former president or his legal team acting in bad faith. This is a deep fake example of what is possible with powerful computer and editing. It took around 72 hours to create this example from scratch using extremely powerful GPU. It could be improved with more computing time, but 90% of people cannot tell the difference.
How about that? That's a pretty good one. Here's another example.
Jake fumbled with his coffee order, inadvertently asking for a tall, dark, and steamy instead of the intended latte. The barista, amused, handed him a cup with a cheeky grin. As Jake blushed, the cafe erupted in laughter. Little did he know that misstep sparked a chain of amusing mishaps, transforming the cafe into a haven for quirky coffee requests.
So obviously that's not Bill Gates, but a very decent deep fake of Bill Gates. And you can start to see how difficult it is to tell real from not real. Now, this next example is interesting because a couple weeks ago, I get all these Google alerts when, fraud-related topics hit the internet. And I think it was CNBC that sent an alert out saying, someone has taken over Tesla USA's website right now or created a fake of it on YouTube, and it's playing right now. And it's a fake of Elon Musk pretending to sell cryptocurrency. And so I went on and just copied it. I went down and just made a copy of it. And let's just listen for a minute. Now, this again is not Elon Musk, okay? He has an interest in cryptocurrency, which is why it's plausible and why scammers want to copy him. But this is not him.
We've prepared something special for you. Right now, we are offering to double your cryptocurrency. Yes, you heard that right. All you need to do is scan the QR code appearing on the screen for our online viewers. Once you scan it, you will immediately gain access to a secure site where you can easily double your Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin, or USDT. Just follow the simple instructions to transfer the required amount to the given address. And within about 5 minutes, your cryptocurrency wallet will be credited with the doubled deposit. Imagine sending just 0.1 Bitcoin and getting 0.2 in return, or transferring 1 Ethereum and seeing your balance double to 2. It's that simple, transparent, and it can truly change your life. There are no age or nationality restrictions, so anyone around the world can participate. Just keep in mind that you can only make 1 transfer for each cryptocurrency. For instance, you can make 1 Bitcoin transfer and 1 Ethereum transfer, but you cannot make multiple transfers in 1 cryptocurrency more than once. We have allocated a massive amount of 1,000 Bitcoins, 1,000 Ethereums, 10 million USDT, and an incredible 100 million Dogecoins for doubling your deposits. But these amounts are limited.
So that's the pitch, right? This is not him. It's not a legitimate offer. It's a scam. And when you scan the QR code right in the middle there, it will take you to a phishing website that's going to, again, probably feature him and look like a quasi-legitimate operation. But from there, good luck. If they ask you to make any deposits, your money's pretty much gone. And here's the last one. This is Jeff Bezos. And notice that what do all 4 of these have in common? Well, yes, they're all men. They're all really wealthy. But they're also all omnipresent on the internet and in media, which is why they're the first sort of victims of this deep fake movement, because, at least up until now, it's taken a lot of bandwidth, a lot of video to create these fakes. That's starting to change, but let's do this one. Here, Bezos is talking about his nonprofit financial literacy operation, which is legitimate, but their scammers are making it sound like it's an opportunity to get rich quick.
I am excited to introduce you to a brand new free project, a WhatsApp community created through EverFi's online platform. In this community, we have the most elite analysis team in the United States, providing professional stock technical analysis and high-quality stock investment portfolios. This is my philanthropic initiative, completely free, aiming to benefit you through expert advice. Join our free WhatsApp community and enhance your stock investment skills together with top-notch analysis teams and investment experts.
There again, you're attracted by the fame of the person, the trust that is engendered because a famous person wouldn't be on TV unless it was really legitimate. And the other thing is, he's talking about the WhatsApp community, and Facebook Freudian slip, Facebook has, a lot of these clubs, friends of Keanu Reeves or friends of other famous people. And that's another way to generate sort of false trust, right? Is that everybody's a fan here, so what, I can trust you. Well, this may in part explain why deep or imposter scams have increased 1,200% in the last 10 years, according to the FTC, and why specifically investment fraud is reaching epidemic levels. You can see this just in the last 4 years. It's gone up massively. And cryptocurrency, which is what the fake Elon Musk ad was selling, is driving it, right? So beware of all of that. And the thing is, I mentioned before that it was only famous people this was happening to, but it's getting easier and easier. And I'm going to show you an example of myself actually using AI. And I want to know whether you folks can tell the difference. I'm going to ask you to vote in the chat after we do this. I'm going to play 2 short clips, Doug number 1 and Doug number 2. One of them, I just read a paragraph about phishing into a microphone, just like you would make any recording. And the second one, I have a software program called Descript. And this is, I think I pay $20 a month for this software. And it helps me edit videos. It's really a nice package and very inexpensive. And it allowed me to train my voice. They gave me a script, took 15 minutes to read into the computer this script. And then all I have to do is type a paragraph and press a button, and it comes out as me. It's me reading this script without me ever reading it. And so what we want to do is see whether you can tell the difference. And again, I'm going to ask you to vote in the chat. Let's play them one at a time, and then we'll vote. Here's the first one.
According to the FBI, the scam that has resulted in the most money lost to consumers in recent years was cyber phishing. Phishing occurs when scammers pose as a legitimate organization like your bank or a brand you recognize and then claim they have detected suspicious activity on your account. The goal is to get you to hand over personal information like a login or password or a date of birth they can use to steal money from your accounts.
Okay, that's number 1. Don't vote yet.
According to the FBI, the scam that has resulted in the most money lost to consumers in recent years was cyber phishing. Phishing occurs when scammers pose as a legitimate organization like your bank or a brand you recognize and then claim they have detected suspicious activity on your account. The goal is to get you to hand over personal information like a login or password or a date of birth they can use to steal money from your accounts.
Okay, now let's vote. And Pam, maybe you can monitor the chat and see how we did. But how many of you think that the real Doug is number 1? If so, just say number 1 in the chat. How many of you think the real Doug is number 2?
Okay, Doug, it looks like, oh, well, it started off with a lot of 1s. Now there are a bunch of 2s. Oh boy, I would say this is about a 50-50 split.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the point, has everybody voted more or less, you think?
A large number have, and it looks like both are pretty convincing.
Okay. Well, it's number 2. And the point of this is not whether you got it right or wrong. The point is it's really hard to tell, right? And again, this cost me nothing really because I already subscribed to this software, and it's just going to get better and better and therefore more and more challenging to determine what's fake and what is not fake. So that's the whole trust thing, and that's a big part of the scammer's game. But another big part is this whole business of getting people under the ether. And again, I think I defined it before, but I'll define it again. Ether is a heightened emotional state where you're not thinking rationally, you're reacting emotionally. And this can happen in a number of ways. One way is you just had some event happen, like the death of a spouse, or you're caring for a loved one, or you got divorced, or you had a financial shortfall, which causes you to lose sleep at night. And, that's a form of heightened emotion. Another way is based on what the scammer does when he's on the phone with you. And in this way, I want to introduce you to another scammer we interviewed several years ago, Jim Vitelli. And what he and Michaels both say is that every single one of us has some event What they're looking for is your emotional Achilles heel. That's the words they use. And that's because everybody has something either in their past or in their present, which when you surface it into a conscious awareness, makes you emotional, makes you in this ether state of imbalance. So if you're not already in it because of something going on, they'll try and find that emotional Achilles heel and ratchet it up. And this is Jim's description of how he does that.
You have cut and dry individuals that are just, yes, no, 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 this doesn't make sense, goodbye, click. And then you have the emotional person who wants to engage in conversation, who wants to, who doesn't even realize what the person on the other end of the phone is doing. They're gathering an arsenal of information by being personable and being friendly and talking to them. They're making notes while they're saying 2 children, one with, a mental illness, one brother lost in Vietnam. They're using all that information to put together their arsenal and profile the person they're on the phone with so that they know which buttons to push to bring the emotion up in that person, because the crush or the kill is emotionally driven. It's not logic. If you apply logic to this concept, it's no. I'm not going to send you my hard-earned money. I don't even know who you are. I know you from Adam. When I wrap that in tons of emotion, that blurs. The logic goes out the window. The emotion kicks in. Now I've endeared you to me. Now I'm no longer the predator on the phone. I'm Jim from New York.
So that's in a nutshell. I couldn't describe it any better than that. That's kind of what they do. And, for years we would tell people, whatever you do on the phone or on email or whatever, don't give out your bank account number, don't give out your social security number. But what we really should be saying is don't give out any personal information about yourself, especially things that they could use to do this kind of manipulation. And that goes for your Facebook accounts, and you're on social media, you're telling your whole life story about your grandchildren. All of that's fine as long as you have adjusted the privacy settings in your Facebook account so that only your relatives can see that. When you sign up for Facebook, and this is another pet peeve of mine, the default position is everything you post gets seen by everybody on the internet, unless you go into the privacy settings and limit who can see what you post. And you can see the danger of that, right? These guys are looking for that kind of stuff. So as I said, we were, in monitoring these millions of robocalls that come into the Noma Robo app, we've identified that sort of there's these 2 ways to sort of create this ether. One is the promise of gain. You've won the lottery, say, or you can get a 10-to-1 return on your crypto investment. Or threat of loss, which is there's a virus on your computer or somebody just hacked into your Amazon account. You could get more nuanced than that in terms of persuasion, but those are the 2 big buckets, the promise of gain or the threat of loss. And it doesn't seem to matter which they use. Both are effective at creating ether. And here's an example of a threat of loss. And let me know, again, in the chat, just say yes or no if you've ever received this call.
Dear customer, this call is from Amazon customer support. This is to notify you regarding your today's purchase on Amazon.com.
Good day.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I'm going to try that again.
Dear customer, this call is from Amazon customer support. This is to notify you regarding your today's purchase on Amazon.com. You have been charged $379.99 on your Visa card. If you have made this purchase on Amazon and recognize it, then simply hang up and your order will be delivered to you. However, if you have not made any such transaction, you can call Amazon support right away on 970-427-6905 or press 1 to connect to our agent.
Now, how do I know that that's a scam? First of all, Amazon's never going to call you with this. But secondly, I've taken these calls. We have the ability to barge into these calls as they come into we call it the honeypot, which is all these 350,000 lines. And when you call the number back or you're connected to an agent. You're talking to a boiler room in India or Pakistan or somewhere in the world, could be anywhere. And what they say is, yeah, that's right. We see that there are 3 or 4 different attempts to buy stuff on your Amazon account, and we can fix it, but we have to remote access into your computer to do that. And once you let them into your computer, a number of bad things can happen, which you can imagine, and we'll describe in a minute. Here's another example. This is one on promise of gain.
Good day. This is Joe Biden, the 46th President of the United States of America. This call that you're receiving was requested by Roman Powers with the Publishers Clearinghouse. Trust me, I understand that due to this time of the pandemic, you may be skeptical about this news, and you may be saying that this is too good to be true. Well, now I'm contacting you to confirm with no doubt that you are indeed a selected winner of $20 million with the Publishers Clearinghouse.
So when we first identified this call, this was back during the pandemic in 2021. I remember thinking, boy, this is the canary in the coal mine. These deep fakes are going to get better, but this is one of the first ones we've seen pretending to be the president of the United States. And I don't need to tell people in New Hampshire, fast forward till February of this year during the New Hampshire primary. Remember this, the day before the primary, there was a deep fake of supposedly Joe Biden discouraging Democrats from turning out to vote so that Trump's margin would be larger. And it was a much better deep fake than this. Just in a couple years, it shows you how. I should have brought that one and played it for you. Much, much better. And all they're really doing, of course, is taking the voice of famous people and turning it into whatever message they want, including that you've won the Publishers Clearinghouse. So, you know, this whole concept of ether, of protecting, being careful making decisions when you're in an emotional state, is not just a crazy con man idea. We actually surveyed, Pam mentioned the last study I worked on at AARP 2021. We surveyed 3,000 people who had all encountered a scam in the previous 12 months. 2,000 of them were able to resist and never lost any money, and 1,000 of them lost money and were victims. What was the difference between those two groups? That was sort of the question we asked. And one difference, we asked them at the time of the encounter, which of the following emotions were you experiencing? Were you upset? Were you stressed? Were you depressed? And how strongly were those emotions? And you can see the victims reporting almost 3 times as many strong emotions during the encounter. But here's another really revealing fact. You know, because we always, for many years, we're looking at what is the demographic profile of a victim? Are they all old people, young people, educated, uneducated? We'd never find a demographic profile that explained all the victimization until we came to this one. The average number of stressful events experienced in the 12 months. Victims reported having over twice as many stressful life events in the months leading up to the encounter compared to the non-victims. And the theory underlying this is that managing stress takes up a lot of cognitive capacity you might otherwise employ to detect a scam coming from a distance and resist it. That's sort of the theory of it. And so again, whether it's ether because the scammers worked you into a strong emotion, or whether it's because you have these stressful life events that make you vulnerable, we think it's less, fraud vulnerability is less about who you are, and it's more about how you are at the time of the encounter. Are you well? Are you stress-free? I mean, nobody's stress-free, let's face it. It's a very stressful, anxious-filled world we live in, but some are more stressed than others, and those people are vulnerable. Now, I want to just give you a couple quick hits on technology. And again, just to show you how easy it is to fake it. I sometimes ask people in an audience when I'm in the room with them, how many of you rely on caller ID to know who's calling you? And a lot of people, raise your hand on the Zoom if you use caller ID. And I can't see the hands, but Pam, are their hands going up?
Oh yeah, the hands
Yeah.
are going up like crazy.
Okay, that's fair enough. And that's the answer we always get is sure, of course. Of course I'm looking at my caller ID. You can't rely on caller ID to know who's calling, and here's why. I have another piece of software. It's on my phone. I think I paid $5 to download this. And this is just one example. And it's called Spoof Card, but there are many programs like this. This is just one of them. And let's say I wanted to call Pam, my colleague, good friend Pam Doobie in New Hampshire. This is what shows up on my phone. I'd enter her number. See, it says number to call. And then right below that, you see where it says number to display. And I can put any number I want in there. I could put the New Hampshire Sheriff's Department. I could put the White House. I could put Social Security Administration, and that's the number that would appear. The other thing is down below, you see it says voice changer, background noise. I can make my male voice sound like a woman's voice by just pressing a button. Or I can make it sound like I'm in a police station. I can have background noise of a police station, a train station, an airport, any number of things. And this is all just virtually free. Several years ago, we played video of these two con men in a Georgia prison. I actually wrote a story about this for the AARP magazine too, where they were filmed by an undercover FBI informant in their jail cell, calling people in San Diego, pretending to be the sheriff's department, telling them they'd missed jury duty and they had to wire money to they didn't send it to the jail. They sent it to Confederates somewhere outside who then sent them the money. So if you can do this from a federal prison, then anything is possible. Now, another thing I want to show you is how many of you, again, raise your hand if you've gotten a call to raise money for the police or the firefighters. Pam, hands? Any? He's not.
Yeah, oh boy. Oh yeah, lots of hands raised. I know
Lots
I've
of
gotten a few of those.
Yeah, and they always sound, don't they, like a sheriff, a deputy sheriff from Oklahoma. Hi, this is Sheriff Jones, and the police are having a hard time. How about a $10, right? That's kind of what. The thing is, it's not a sheriff in Oklahoma. It's a voice that sounds like it. And this thing you're looking at here is called a soundboard. This is very common. You imagine a boiler room in the Philippines or in New Delhi, right? And this is what they're looking at. And each one of these buttons has a short pre-recorded message that they press depending on what the person is saying, so that it sounds like that deputy sheriff, but it's really somebody who may not even speak English that well. And I'm just going to play this, and you can sort of watch the arrow moving, because it will click on the button and then the response.
Morning, this is Mike Brument on behalf of the Association for Firefighters and Paramedics. Ma'am, the reason for my call is to remind residents in the area that the Association for Firefighters and Paramedics is having its fundraising drive. As always, money raised will provide assistance to burn victims, like children who are unable to fend for themselves, and families who have lost homes or possessions in catastrophic fires. Now, ma'am, when you receive your pledge kit and the decal, can you make a commitment to support the Association for Firefighters and Paramedics this year?
Okay, yes.
Great. Okay, well, we have some different amounts. The top two spots for the drive are the gold sponsor at 75 and the silver at 50. Those levels are only suggested, and every dollar counts. What can you commit to and still be comfortable with?
Really, I can do more than $25.
Great. Thank you so much for your support, ma'am. That will go an extremely long way to help them out. Let me just ask, are you 100% comfortable with that amount?
Yes.
Okay. Well, if you can do that, all I need to do is transfer you to the records department so they can confirm your mailing address and get that pledge mailed out to you. So please hold on, okay?
All right.
Hold on for just a second.
Okay.
Thank you for holding this from the records.
Now, there's a couple of things I want to point out about this. One is, you see that he's just responding with these pre-recorded messages. We're not sure who's pressing the buttons, but it's not the voice that you hear. That's one thing. The other thing is this is a pet peeve of mine. These police and firefighter organizations, not all of them, but increasing numbers of them, don't even register as charities in your state. Normally, the advice is, oh, well, if somebody asks you for a donation, ask them how much goes to the charitable purpose and how much goes to the cost of fundraising, and then check them out before you give. Call the Secretary of State's office where they should be registered as a charity. And the problem is that more and more of these are not registered as charities. They're registered as political action committees and they're called 527 organizations under the Federal Elections Commission, which is regulated but not monitored, and the enforcement is a lot less. And so they're using that platform to technically still be legal, but have no accountability really to speak of. And I've taken a lot of these calls, and normally when I ask them how much goes to the cost of fundraising, they hang up on me. The few times when they've answered, they've said, well, after all costs are expended, 12% goes to programs. I'm like, okay, so if I give you $100, that means that $88 goes to you, the person calling, and this crazy soundboard thing, and only $12 goes to the police? I don't think so. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. I would, if you want to support the police, and we should support the police and the firefighters, I'm not saying that anything other than that, contact the local police department, ask them the police guild they support, and donate directly. That's my advice. Okay, now I'm coming to wrap up here in a minute, but I wanted this tech support business. This is the #1 scam that is targeting older people, and it starts like this. It starts like this.
Please call our support immediately. Important security message. Your computer has been locked up. Your IP address was used without your knowledge or consent to visit websites that contains identity theft virus. To unlock the computer, please call support immediately. Please do not attempt to shut down or restart your computer.
How many of you have gotten a message like that while you're online? Just give me your hand. Quite a few. Pam, right? Yep.
Going into the double digits. Yep.
Yeah. So what is that? Let me introduce you to a guy named Jim Browning. And if you've never seen Jim Browning on YouTube, you really ought to give it a try. During the pandemic, I was kind of bored one day, and I looked on YouTube and stumbled onto his website, and I couldn't stop watching it because he has figured out a way to infiltrate these boiler rooms. And, he has 4.27 million subscribers. And I'll let you listen to him describe what he does, and then I'll come back here.
These scammers are in a place called Ramesh Nagar in New Delhi, so capital of India. And how did I get them? Well, really, the answer is they tried to scam me at some point. So they make outbound calls, as we'll hear in a second. And at some point, they called me. And the long and short of it is they wanted access to my computer. And you'll hear them talking over me in the background here. But because they wanted access to my computer, it's set up in a way that I can reverse that access. So as soon as I connected to my computer, I basically scammed them. And the long and short of it is I can now see their computer, or in this case, computers. In fact, what we can do is listen into any one of the, they're actually not on telephones. You'll not see a phone on any desk. They're using their computers with headsets, because no scammers these days use real telephones. They always use computers.
So just to double back on what he does, he has set up a fake virtual computer. This guy is an IT professional. He lives somewhere in Europe. His name is not Jim Browning. It's a fake name, and you'll see why in a minute. He's shutting down these boiler rooms by doing this. He has a fake computer and a fake phone line, or just a separate phone line. And when he gets that error message, he calls the 800 number, just like victims do. They say, okay, yeah, you've got a virus. This is Microsoft. headquarters and we've been monitoring your computer and hackers have hacked into your computer. So we need to remote access into your computer to fix it. And he lets them into his computer. And when they open that channel, he reverse engineers his way into their computers and downloads software that allows him to videotape and audio tape everything they're doing, including hacking into the closed circuit cameras that give you this wide shot that we're looking at right now of the room. And again, during the middle of the pandemic, I just couldn't stop watching this. And so I reached out to Jim Browning thinking he's never going to respond to me. He's got 4 million subscribers, you know, he doesn't need us. But he got back to me right away because he said, yeah, I have 4 million subscribers and the average age is a 25-year-old male, right? And all the victims are older people. And I have no way of reaching them, but AARP does. And so from there, he shared all of his videos. We did a big story in the magazine about him because this is the #1 scam targeting older people right now. And this example I'm going to show you, I'm not going to go into real depth in the interest of time, but not all of these scams are run in India. A lot of them are, but not all of them. This particular example, he focuses on India. So the scammer, this guy on the left here, is Eastern Indian, mid to late 20s, speaks fluent English, and he's the closer. He was a particularly good scammer. And the victim, you'll only hear parts of her voice, and we kept her anonymous, is a woman in her early 60s, disabled, caregiver for her 82-year-old mother, very low income and not very tech savvy. And in fact, one of the first questions these people ask when you call is, how old are you? And if you say that you're under 60, they hang up on you. They only want to talk to older people. And once you call, then they'll say, yes, we got a remote access in, you've got a virus on your computer or multiple viruses. Because remember, the whole point here is to get the victim under the ether by scaring them, the threat of loss, right? You're going to lose everything on your computer if you don't do this. So you say, okay, remote access in, if you can fix it right now, I'll let you do that. And they have you use some program like Supremo or Team, I forget what all of the different sound, AnyDesk, TeamViewer, Supremo. There's a number of these programs that you could, I've used them before when I call Apple for something wrong with my computer, but I've initiated the call. That's the difference, not them initiating it. So it's not like you should never let anybody in, but it's only if you're calling the help desk of Apple or you're calling the help desk of Microsoft. Anyway, so the first thing he's trying to do again is build trust. And what you see here on the left, the guy in the pink shirt in the foreground, that's the scammer. Because remember, Jim has hacked into his closed circuit television. So now he can see the guy who's actually doing the scamming. But on the right, this is his screen, and he's in the victim's computer. So this is what both he and the victim are seeing right now. And the first part is just him being friendly and kind of flirting with her to build trust.
And how old are you? 25?
Yep, I'm 61 years old.
No. I can't believe that. Ma'am, I'm ready to bet with you.
No,
Nobody
I'm
can
61.
say you are 65.
But I know a lot of people say you don't act like it.
You sound like you are in your early 30s. Believe me. You have a rich voice.
No, I'm not
I can't believe
kidding.
him.
I'm 61.
You're kidding me. 61?
I'm 61 years young.
No, I don't believe you. I don't believe.
That's a good way to look at it. Yes,
That's a good way. That's a good way to put.
So just kind of flirting. And these people, they'll sound, if you never question them, they'll sound exactly like a legitimate IT person right up until they steal your money. Here's what they do. Once you let them into your computer, they will take you to parts of your computer that every computer has. This thing on the left is called the event log. And you see on the left, it has all these sort of scary looking triangles and red, yellow, error warning, danger, danger, danger. Those are not indicative of a virus or any problem with your computer at all. Those are just, you tried to open a software package and it closed and then you had to redo it, and it creates an error warning. IT people use this just to see what's going on in your computer, and it does not mean you have a virus. But if you didn't know that, and you know nothing about computers, this is what he's going to tell you, right?
Okay.
Warning.
Do you see here, ma'am? Do you see? Look here.
Yeah.
All the,
I see all those.
see,
Restart,
See?
restart.
see, do you see the, see the date and time?
Yeah.
Yeah, see the date and time, everything, see? And you have
Oh, wait.
2,831
Yeah, that's
warnings
a
and
lot. That's
See?
bad. That's bad.
it is, it is. That is why I was calling you.
I don't.
Okay,
Okay, now let's see here.
okay.
So anyway, and they just take you through a series of scare tactics like that. There's others, but I won't bore you with them. Leading up to, by the time he gets to this page where he's going to tell her how much it costs to fix it, she's begging him to fix it. She's like, I don't know anything about computers. It sounds like it's really expensive. And he goes, well, normally if I were to do all these things, clean your computer, reactivate all the services, blah, 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 it would cost $1,500 to $2,000. But because you don't have a lot of money and you're taking care of your mother, and because I like you, I'll only charge you $669.99 to fix a non-existent problem. Thank you very much, right? And remember, Jim is monitoring this transaction, and he was able to actually, in this case, call her on her cell phone before she paid the money and block the call. And I've ridden along with him on a number of these where we're watching the whole thing leading up to the money and then trying to stop it at the end. It doesn't always work, and that can be really frustrating. And for every call that we're monitoring, there's thousands of others that are not being monitored. Well, the bottom line is, if this happens to you, there's a simple way to get out of it. Even this thing will be blaring sounds and saying, whatever you do, don't turn off your computer, call the number right away. You should turn off your computer. That's the way to fix this. Because what these pop-ups are is, you were on some website. It doesn't even have to be like a porn site. Porn sites have a lot of these, but it could be a Facebook site or anything. And you click on a dog food ad, something as benign as a dog food ad. And when you click on that ad, a little piece of JavaScript, a little piece of software is downloaded onto your computer that is completely benign, except that a week later, it creates this pop-up that gets you to call, because now it's an emergency. So if the thing comes up on your screen and you hold the power button down for 5 seconds and then reboot, or unplug it for 5 seconds and replug it in, it will go away and there will be no lingering problem with your computer. That's the simple solution. But again, if you don't know that, most people, or too many people, call the number and get victimized. So just to sort of wrap up here, I want to make sure there's time for questions. Detection tips. Since I was a young investigator, cocky investigator, I always had the mindset of guilty until proven innocent. Well, as cocky as that was 30 years ago, now I think it's almost a necessity. Anytime anyone solicits you, anytime you get an unsolicited call or email or text or pop-up, no matter what it says, you should be suspicious and should never respond to them. If it's something about your bank and you're worried about your bank account, log off and independently contact your bank the way you normally do with your login and your password. Never click on a link for any of these things. There's a lot of robocalls still, but there's even more texting going on and a lot more scare tactics than there used to be. So beware of that. I would almost say if it's unsolicited call, email, text, and pop-ups, and there's any kind of threat that it sounds like, you're almost guaranteed that that's a scam and you should not respond to it. Avoid interactions that trigger your emotions. And I would also say avoid engaging with people on the phone when they're trying to ask you personal questions, because some people are trying to use those as weapons against you. Ask more questions than you answer. I like to say that questions are con man kryptonite. When I do these calls where I pretend to be a consumer, I'll test this theory out. As soon as I start asking them questions, they hang up on me, right? They don't want people who ask questions. They're gonna, you want too much information. They want to be doing all the talking. The person who's asking the questions is controlling the conversation. And a lot of these Medicare calls, I've taken a lot of the Medicare calls. They just go right into asking you all kinds of detailed questions about your medicines and your doctor and your blood pressure and all this stuff, which is no one's business but your own. But they ask it on the basis of you could save a lot of money by changing your Medicare, plans. And then become a fraud fighter. A lot of the folks on the phone here, my experience is you're not likely to fall for any of these scams. But we all know people who will or might. They live alone. They're experiencing a lot of stressful life events. So please share this information with at least a couple friends after you leave here today. And we also have, Pam, I can't remember how we were going to do this, but here, go ahead.
So tomorrow morning, everyone who is on the call today is going to receive a thank you email for joining us. It also is a survey about this presentation, and a couple handouts will be attached from Doug's archives to help you, have something in hand to look at.
Yeah, and this harden the target business, all that is a fancy term for using technology to block some of these incoming attacks to begin with. The call blocking, robocall blocking is just one example of that. I've given you a whole list here that if you do all of these things, you're going to be a lot safer. The other thing I just want to end with is the Fraud Watch helpline. This is the number, has been in existence for many years. AARP was really a pioneer in creating a phone center just to support victims and to answer questions for people who have questions about fraud. You don't have to be a victim to call this number, but if you know somebody who's being harassed or know somebody who's been victimized, or you just have a question about a call that you got, we have trained hundreds of volunteers who staff these phone lines, and many of them have been victims themselves. So they're very sympathetic to whatever situation you might be in when you call. And so I would write that number down and keep it somewhere by your phone or whatever. Anyway, that's pretty much all I have, Pam.
Okay, well, we have some questions, and we have a little bit of time left, so hopefully we can do some rapid fire answers. And if we don't get to your question, please use that toll-free number that Doug just showed. I've also put it in the chat a few times. Someone at that hotline will be able to help you out. But let's get to a few questions. So the first one's from Veronica. She's had some compounding issues involving theft of mail, tampering, hacking cell phones, hacking of electronic devices, and she definitely needs help and guidance on where to start, because this has kind of been going on for a couple of years. Does she get an attorney involved? Does she contact the media? Does she file a police report? Where does Veronica start, Doug?
I think the number you just saw is the place to start. Call the helpline. This is exactly what those folks do. They will direct you to, there's resources with the FTC. There's the Identity Theft Resource Center. I could list them all now, but the best thing to do is just call that number and you will get a call back. You'll leave your name and they will call you back within 24 hours. And they do. Not a waste of your time. That's where I suggest.
All right, next up we have Darby. She's a professional fiduciary and someone who serves as a POA and a trustee for many elderly people in various stages of vulnerability who are sometimes not capable of recognizing or accepting the fact that calls are fraud. They're not normally on Facebook, on the internet. Are there any tools on the horizon for vulnerable adults?
Well, like I said, the harden the target list that you're going to get tomorrow when Pam mails out the survey, it provides for some of that. For example, with the robocall blocking, if you're worried that one of these people is just getting a lot of phone calls, that would be a way of stopping the phone calls without them having to give up their number. People don't want to give up their number. They've had that number since they were, for 40 years and so forth. So I would look at that list as a sort of a checklist of things to do. And call the helpline to get more resources. That's also what they do.
Okay, this is a great question from Elizabeth. If you aren't sure that what you have received is legitimate, no matter how you receive it, what is the best course to take? She says she finds it hard to reach anyone via phone call nowadays.
Yeah, I know. That's true. I think, trust your instinct. If it raises suspicion, just assume it's a scam. I mean, I do. Every interaction I have, again, the very first tip I give you is like, if you get an unsolicited text or an ad or anything like that, and your instinct is it might be a scam, it probably is a scam, you know?
Yeah.
There are things like the Better Business Bureau that you can check in your local community to see if they've had any complaints. The Attorney General's office, I used to work in the AG's office. My wife still does work in the AG's office. They monitor the marketplace and sue people. That's a place to call. It is sometimes challenging to get a live person. The Federal Trade Commission has a 1-800 number that you can call. And again, all these resources are available through our helpline if you want to reach them.
All right, I got a couple more for you, Doug. Ron's wife was part of a national data breach last December. Someone has her social security number. They have used it to open up a credit card recently. They have gone through and frozen her credit and canceled the new card and reported fraud. What else do they need to do?
You need to contact the Internal Revenue Service and tell them you've been a victim of identity theft. And they will. My wife was a victim of identity theft about 5 years ago. She was volunteering for my daughter's school and somebody breached the database and has her social security number. What the IRS will do is they will give you a special identity theft number. And when you file your taxes, every year now for the next forever, I guess, you'll have to use that identity theft number so that, and what they're guarding against here is that the real threat is they might try and file a fake tax return in your name and get a refund using your social security number. But the one thing I want to say, Pam, just everyone on this call and everyone in any audience I've spoken to this year has already had their identity stolen. That's the bad news. There've been so many breaches. Everyone's information's already on the dark web or somewhere. And that's why the good news, though, is that very few of those are actually going to be converted to identity fraud. And so doing things like online banking, monitoring, I have one banking account, one credit card account, and my pension account, and I monitor them every day. And the bank will do this for free. With your credit card, I have a thing that says if anybody uses this card at all, including me, I want a text saying what it was and when it was. And this just happened to me. I was just a victim of credit card fraud last week. I get one of those alerts and it says $1,200 to Southwest Airlines on my credit card. I call my bank. I say, that's not mine. They immediately cancel my credit card number and issue me a new card and cancel the debt right away. I mean, it wasn't on there for more than 2 minutes and I was calling them. Now, the hassle with that is if you have auto pay with all your credit card, you got to change all those things. But monitoring your accounts is the way to avoid this identity theft becoming identity fraud.
And Doug, just a few more comments because we're at the stroke of midnight here, stroke of noon. Just a few comments from people. We have people putting things in the chat about those emails you get from the U.S. Postal Service about, can you confirm your address? We have your package, but we need your correct address. Carl said that his father is in denial about his dementia, once gave out his social security number on the phone to a spam caller. Thankfully, nothing happened, but they were freaked out, of course. Ron had someone buying things from their iPad in Shanghai, China. Fortunately, Apple reimbursed them, but they changed all their passwords. So, there's just an avalanche of this kind of stuff out there. So I thank you all. I thank Doug for joining us today and sharing this fantastic information. I thank all of you for making the time, for asking your questions. I hope that everyone learns something new today and that you'll use it in your own lives and share with your loved ones. As I mentioned before, this recording will be on our AARP New Hampshire YouTube page in the next day or so, and that you will also receive a follow-up email that includes resources from Doug and a survey that we hope you'll fill out. So remember, if you can spot a scam, you can. Thank you so much for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye-bye.